Welcome, everyone. It's truly an honor to be with you today to talk a little bit about the journey of Canvas Learning Management System and how it's being used to amplify education around the world. My name is Melissa Loble. I'm the Chief Customer Experience Officer for Instructure, and I've been with Instructure a little over 7 years now. My responsibility is to make sure our customers have the best experience possible, and I'm excited to be able to share some of those experiences directly with one of our customers today. I've also spent the majority of my career in higher education and K-12, helping institutions, districts, and universities find the best paths to use technology to amplify teaching and learning. I'm excited that most of our conversation today will be an interview with Vivian Faustino, professor at City College of San Francisco and volunteer with Jesuit Worldwide Learning. But before we get into that great conversation, I did want to share a little bit about the Canvas journey. So think back to 2008. The time in the world in education was one that cloud-based learning was just starting to emerge. And learning management systems had been around for a little over a decade, but were starting to become more of a norm within higher education in particular. Two students at BYU were frustrated with the learning management system that they were using because it wasn't easy to use and it wasn't reliable and it didn't feel scalable. So they decided as part of a master's project to embark on developing a new learning management platform. They jumped in their Geo Metro, traveled the country, and talked to faculty and students all over to understand how best they could use a learning management system to truly impact the teaching and learning that they were doing. Well, through that journey, Canvas was born, truly the first learning management platform that is founded on a cloud-based platform, and in particular, AWS. Now, fast forward a year, they did this research, traveled all over the country, and began building what would be Canvas today. They talked to institutions, particularly in Utah, where Canvas was founded, and saw immediate interest in impact, largely because of the reliability and the scalability and the ease of use of the platform that they were building. So by 2011, Instructure was born, and Canvas was already in the hands of hundreds of teachers and students looking to change the way they teach online. From there, Canvas grew really quickly, largely because of that reliability and that stability and the ability to use Canvas and really focus on the teaching and learning part of your experience as opposed to having to manage a robust technology on campus. One of the challenges I faced when I ran educational technology teams at a couple of different universities was trying to stay current on the most recent version. We were always 3 or 4 versions behind because it took so much for us to maintain the platform internally in-house and on-premise, and it was so complicated to be able to roll out any of the releases. So Canvas grew quickly because it solved all of that for teachers and students and predominantly administrative teams at universities. With that rapid, though, growth in higher education, and at the time we were seeing more and more distance learning, online learning, hybrid learning programs emerge, K-12 caught wind. And in 2012, Canvas officially launched in the K-12 world. There, the challenges were a bit different. K-12 organizations, K-12 districts, and even K-12 teams at a state level struggled because they didn't have the same technical resources that often higher education had. And they were new to the whole online learning experience. And so they quickly adopted Canvas as well because of that ease of use, the ability to focus on the teaching, the ease to ramping teachers into leveraging the platform, and because it was such a reliable and scalable cloud-based platform. Now, over the years, since K-12 launched in both higher education, since Canvas launched in both higher education and K-12, we found growth globally. We started to see interest in Europe, in Asia, in Australia, New Zealand, and in Latin America because of, once again, the premise of Canvas. It's all about teaching and learning, not about having to manage complicated technology. This landed us in an excellent spot with Canvas in 2020. The pandemic hit, and institutions in K-12 districts were faced with rapid change in education. They had to find ways to take all of their in-person activities, their in-person teaching, their in-person experiences with their students, and put them online in a matter of weeks and months in some cases. Well, with that, all of those institutions that had adopted Canvas or adopted online technology in general were at an advantage. They now had this reliable and scalable platform, Canvas, that could support this significant uptick in usage. And K-12 was able to take advantage of this, especially in places where there wasn't an online learning management system yet, because it was so easy for them to implement, adopt, and leverage Canvas in a very short period of time. In fact, we saw at Instructure a transition very quickly in the first months of the 2020 pandemic. We saw a transition of 2.2 million active users to upwards of 6 and 7 million active users at any given time concurrently. So that showed that not only were we able to address our markets, but we were able to support really significant scale and growth around that concurrent users and just overall with active users in a really short period of time, all thanks to the work that we've done in partnership with AWS and that cloud-based foundation. We also saw over 1,300 new customers come on board in 2020 in pretty much between May and July, and they all saw significant success as they transitioned their teaching and learning into an online environment. And so today, Canvas continues to be one of the most used online learning platforms around the world to support supplemental, hybrid, online, non-traditional, every sort of type of education you can think of across the age gamut, from preschool and and opportunities in early development and childhood centers, all the way through to continued adult education and lifelong learning opportunities. Once again, the ease of use, the scalability, and that reliable platform that was easy to manage gave us that advantage to continue to grow and do things like we're going to talk with today, one of our professors. Canvas has truly had an impact on the world because of its ability to take work like Vivian Faustino, who I'm about to introduce you to, take her work and have it have the impact not only within her own college, but within global humanitarian projects that she supports. So with that, I'm very excited to introduce Vivian Faustino.
Thank you, Melissa. It's really a pleasure being here today. And as you mentioned, my full-time work is with City College of San Francisco. I am a business faculty and the founder and the program lead for the Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation. I also teach part-time at University of San Francisco School of Management, and my volunteer work is with Jesuit Worldwide Learning, teaching refugees from various countries like Syria, Afghanistan, Jordan, Congo, and many others. Jesuit Worldwide Learning is a global partnership that is committed to providing tertiary education to those at the margins. And they also pivoted into training and providing education to tribal and disadvantaged communities in Myanmar, Nigeria, India, and Nepal, among others. It's really a pleasure to be part of this organization. It's such a privilege. And with that, I have here a short video to introduce to you some of the other things about the organization and to walk you through what Jesuit Worldwide Learning is all about.
The mission of JWL is to bring the promise of higher education at the margins.
Margins defined as places of refuge for those who have been forcibly displaced, or communities that historically, because of poverty, geographic location, have not been able to access higher education.
We have programs in Iraq, we have programs in Afghanistan, programs in Sudan, in Africa.
Those students are able to join others in a global classroom to access education.
I was looking for an opportunity to contribute to uplifting the lives of those at the margins. And for me, I don't have deep pockets. I cannot just keep on giving them fish, but I believe in the power of teaching them how to fish. And for me, education is a gift that keeps on giving.
JWL has moved from beyond the proof of concept into a very successful model of providing higher education at the margins. We are grateful to Canvas and AWS for providing services that make the delivery of our education programs possible.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction into your work, Vivian. I'd love to get your thoughts on what challenges both you and your colleagues are facing in higher education today, particularly as you're thinking about using technology.
I'll speak specifically from the perspective of a faculty from a community college setting. Although some private universities, public universities might also share some of these too. But I would name three major challenges that have overarching concerns or impact. Number one is the rise of non-traditional competitors. Community colleges are no longer competing with other institutions of higher learning or higher education. The introduction of certifications and badging programs that offer marketable skills that employers need is very attractive to community college learners. For example, in my program, in entrepreneurship programs, I'm competing with incubators out there who are offering training and at the same time, almost like a guaranteed path to seed funding. Number two is currency of the courses and the program. It is with the world that we're living in today, it's fast changing, evolving business environment. For us to cope with changing the currency, changing the or editing or revisiting our programming is a little bit challenging. You know, from course development or program development all the way to state approval, it would pretty much take at least a year, and that would lead us or leave us to be not really current as compared to what is needed by the industry. And number three is the archaic funding formula, at least for in a community college setting, because the metric that is being used is on the number of certificate completion or the degree completion. This is perfectly fine when our students, like in the past, are high school students and trying to get a degree. But the demographics of community college students are very different today. On average, our students are 29 years old. And for urban centers like San Francisco, LA, New York, we have a lot of students who are not after the degree or the certificate. They just come in because they would like to reskill and upskill and retool to get a job. They're underemployed. And with that, they don't need that certificate. They would just take certain programs or certain courses that would allow them or give them those specific set of skills. But those are not being measured. So in that case, we are not properly funded. So what's the result of that? Those courses are being cut. And I think that it's really a big disservice to this community that we should serve as a community college.
Those are great insights. And all three of those challenges, while I see how they directly apply in the community college setting, I think they're challenges for higher education across the globe. Funding, resourcing, attracting different types of students, and trying to address those different types of students' needs is so important today. As you think about those challenges, how do you see technology playing a role in addressing them?
Oh, technology plays a huge part. It's a major driver of everything that we do today in higher education. Number one, I could imagine how the world would be when it has come to a standstill when we had the early stages of pandemic. So number two, I would say that even prior to COVID-19, we are really leveraging on technology to achieve the interconnectivity of existing capacities and resources within the college. And more importantly, in bringing those partners that we have, the industry partners, community organizations, all of those we cannot bring on campus without the technology. And number three, I believe, obviously, with the work that I do with Jesuit Worldwide Learning, it really makes education accessible to everyone. We cannot reach those refugees in those camps without technology. However, I would like to say that there's still more work to do when we talk about inclusivity, because technology also, especially during COVID-19, highlighted the haves and the have-nots. There are students who already have access to internet, they have the equipment, so it's easy for them to pivot to online or remote learning. But there are others who don't, or they don't have access to internet. So these are things that would somehow still an area that we have to look into.
Yeah, access is so important when we think about not only how do we deliver education online and education in places where it's never been able to be accessed, but it's also critical as we think about that changing nature of a student and the profile and the difference in which education is delivered today than it was even 10 years ago. But I want to dig into the thinking about COVID and some of the comments that you made there. As you've seen the world's response to COVID, I think there's so much humanitarian efforts that have surfaced as a result of COVID. How has it impacted both your educators, your fellow colleagues at your community college, and how has 2020 and 2021 and what we've seen with the pandemic also affected your work with Jesuit Worldwide Learning?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. I would say I wouldn't forget that March 2020, when everything has been put into a reset. Um, for my work with Jesuit Learning, it has been designed that way. It was online, it was asynchronously, so it wasn't really affected that much. But there are some positive things that happen when everybody has to migrate into remote teaching and learning. For me, I have been teaching online through Jesuit Learning, so I was introduced to that early on in my career. That was in 2010, so it wasn't very difficult for me to transition into remote teaching. However, for many of my colleagues who have never taught remotely, never taught online, it was quite a challenge. So this is not only for students, but even for faculty as well, and also for other support services within the college. So with that, I would say that I would be thankful first that we have a very, very active and robust ed tech team who were able to help us transition into remote learning environment. And also we have a virtual campus wherein we have courses that were already ready 100% to be offered online. So that's actually a big thing. Now, for the Jesuit Worldwide Learning, I think because everybody now is quite familiar using Canvas, that's one thing, and we're using Canvas for JWL. It's easier to recruit volunteers because in the past they haven't taught online. So even though they would like to volunteer for this program, teaching refugees, but they don't know how to use Canvas or use the technology to facilitate the courses or the program, it's hard to recruit. So this is the positive consequence of remote learning that we learned during the pandemic.
I love all of those experiences, the highlight to where a really effective ed tech team at your college was just able to amplify and expand how your colleagues are using technology, particularly Canvas, as opposed to have to start from scratch. And that I can see that huge benefit. Same with that recruiting of volunteers. I didn't think about it that way, but that's so powerful. You can reach so many more people remotely than you ever could to help promote these kinds of humanitarian and just really positive actions for the world as a whole. In thinking about that, I think of those as disruptions and positive disruptions. And this is what I'm personally hopeful for in education, is that we can keep disrupting, that there's a momentum here and that we can just take full advantage of that and use online learning platforms like Canvas and technology to our advantage. What do you see as potentially the next disruption in higher education?
Wow, that's really a powerful question. I would say that it is happening now. All the writings are on the wall. So that's why it really calls for radical change, I would say, for community colleges or for higher education in general. Number one, I would say the democratization of education. It is good in many respects, but if we don't actually act to really take advantage of what's going on, I think we will be disrupted and we will be eliminated or we will become irrelevant. And community colleges are extremely vulnerable. For example, Amazon expanded its secondary pathways program. And by the way, we are also working closely with them on that. There are a lot of professional courses to teach in-demand, in-demand jobs, marketable skills that would get these people hit the ground running. So sometimes I cannot help it, but I would pose a critical question there that what is the value of a community college certificate as compared to a certificate coming from Google or IBM or HP, where it's almost guaranteeing them internship and almost a pathway to an actual paid job. So there's a lot more work to do. And I think we are going there. I would say that community colleges are starting to go in that direction, but not a lot of support is really in place. I would say also there's some kind of pushback. And for example, I would be more specific on this. In my program for the Center for Entrepreneurship, I'm using a platform approach. For example, we know that Uber is a platform connecting drivers and riders. Amazon is a marketplace connecting sellers and buyers or consumers. And I thought, how come we cannot do that? As a community college institution, a higher learning institution, we could be a platform to curate these programs, contents that are cutting edge. And the beauty about that, in my experience partnering with HP, with Amazon, they provide us also with the technology. And oftentimes the student cannot afford this on their own, or our college can support this all the time. So this is really a win-win situation for industry and also for higher education.
It is so true. There's so much more about access and availability and creativity in the way we're bringing education to the world today than even a year ago. And so much of it comes from awareness. You talk about that, about how just making folks aware of the impact and aware of the reality of a learner today and what they need to accomplish in their own education in order to grow their own careers. It's like the spotlight's being shown in such a different way in education, and I'm personally inspired by that. To me, the fact that we are uncovering potential that we may never have saw, and we're moving so much more quickly in the way we advance technology and education as a whole is just going to change the way we think about all aspects of growth and development and personal contribution in the world for years to come. What inspires you, perhaps as our last question, around the future of education?
I really see a lot of opportunities right now. And again, like what I said earlier, technology is a major driver. A lot of these plans or the strategic directions that I am advocating, I'm doing a research a lot about the future of education. I would say that it's really driven by technology. The future of work will redefine higher education. The what is happening right now is really bound to happen anyway. I think that COVID just fast tracked everything by maybe 5 to 8 years, and this calls for a great reset. And that means radical changes to align with changing demographic and evolving technological landscape. I can see the opportunities for non-domain specific learning that supports life-wide learning. And this is why I really would encourage it's no longer just lifelong learning, but life-wide learning, whole person learning, and mandates for access and equity. I also noticed that the attention is shifting away from predefined skills and competencies towards capacities. And this is why I'm still really excited about entrepreneurial mindset, growth mindset, and all that, because that's the direction. It's about capacities and mindsets that enable learning how to learn. Such learning is almost always collaborative, social, and technology driven. I would also say that the self-directed learning and integration of learning and work is going to happen. It is taking shape now, and I think we have to be ready in really embracing them. And also cross-cultural collaboration. And to give an example, My class at the University of San Francisco, I registered for an X-Culture program wherein my students are actually working for a multinational corporation outside the US, collaborating with various students all over the world. So this is, I think, the future of education. And again, it could not happen without the support of technology or without the technological platform in place. And another exciting vision that I have for the future of education is the introduction of interdisciplinary programs. I think faculty educators would have to get out of our silos and really start designing non-domain specific knowledge and skills that would help create and produce the students who are more who can really have contextual intelligence or contextual knowledge.
Just those ideas alone inspire me even more about where education will go in the very short term and very long term. If I had to summarize all of those great examples and ideas, I think we're trying as a collective to educate the whole human and to get all of the tactical aspects of education out of the way so we can drive that whole human to be the kind of contributor in the world that will just make it, truthfully, a better place for everyone. Thank you so much, Vivian, for all of those incredible insights and the contributions and the inspiring work you're doing in your own community. If I had to summarize all of that, you're focused on developing the whole human and helping us in education understand how we can best do that. That's how we can ensure the kind of change not only in education, but around the world in everything that we do, because we're able to, through education and through the use of technology in education, help learners grow and develop in that life-wide learning experience that you talk about. So thank you again for your time today. It's so wonderful to have you share your experiences, your research, your insights, and to help inspire the broader education community and technology community to help support this kind of change and innovation happening in higher education, K-12 education, and education around the world.
Thank you so much, Melissa. It's really a pleasure to be here. And I would like to end by reminding everyone that education is a gift that keeps on giving. And it doesn't have to be just knowledge, but it has to be transformative. Thank you, everyone.